Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the PivotBoss pre-market video for Monday, March 4th, 2019. I am Frank Ochoa, aka PivotBoss. Real quick, I would like to invite you to the monthly market outlook this afternoon at 3:30 p.m. Central, 4:30 p.m. Eastern. We will be reviewing some of the candidates that we offered last month in the last monthly market outlook, which turned out fantastic. We will also be looking at new candidates for the month of March and also providing some directional analysis for the markets. I'll also take any requests you have. It will be recorded just in case you cannot make it, but I'd love to see you there anyway. This afternoon. So 3:30 p.m. Central is the time, and I'd love to see you. All right, taking a look at the ES here, you'll see that the ES is currently testing the high end of the previous month's range. We are at or above that high right now, and for the most part, any near-term rejection there again opens up a push that could be as deep as the midpoint of last month. Now, last month was a pretty narrow range, but it had some directional conviction. What I mentioned for this month is perhaps we see some initial selling pressure that brings us into the pivot range, and that could provide another round of strength. If there's any failure to hold the midpoint of this pivot range, that opens up more weakness to the low of the previous month. So that's the approach to take right now, the if then else statement for the month. Overall, again, we're in that area of the chart where we have seen quite a bit of selling pressure here lately. You can see a bit of an LVN here, a bigger LVN even above that into 28.55 or so. So again, it wouldn't surprise me if we start to see some sort of wider selling pressure, but for the most part the directional conviction is still up. I still believe any pullback will be bought until proven otherwise. Okay, let's take a look now at the NQ. You'll notice here the NQ has very similar price structure, is also sitting above the previous month's high. So this is the first time here trading above the previous month's high. Again, this is an early zone here where if it doesn't just push higher, then perhaps it may reject prices above that high and pull back into the pivot range. Any pullback into the pivot range, again, will be seen as a buying opportunity until proven otherwise. Now again, this is approaching major resistance. The 7200 level, which was already hit today, the high 7206 quarter. 7200 is going to be very important. It's the first time we're seeing a test at that level since we kind of fell away from it back over here in November and also in October. So this is the zone where we kind of fell off the cliff away from that level. So again, very important level here to watch. We'll see how price plays out in this zone, but again, there's a nice little LVN at about 7170, and that's basically around the previous month's high. If there's any failure to hold that level on an intraday basis, that could trigger quite a bit of selling pressure. Okay, let's take a look now at crude oil. You'll see here crude oil has sold off the last session, outside day down, where price came above the previous high and actually came above the previous month's high, and then sold off to close below the previous session's low, actually closed below 2-day closes. That's a pretty solid pullback, right? But the overall uptrend remains intact. You can certainly see it here. The overall uptrend since the last week of December has remained intact. Price is now testing the pivot range for the month, also testing prices below the 8-period moving average. In an uptrending market inside the trigger zone, again, that is usually an opportunity to buy and continue higher. Now, if there's any failure to hold, above say 56s here, that may lead to more of a test downward. But really, it's this midpoint right here for the month that's going to mean a lot, and it's around the 54.40 level, 54.45. If there's a failure to hold that level, then perhaps we see 51.25. That's these recent lows. But until proven otherwise, perhaps we see some sort of failed low reaction that leads to more strength. Something like this over here, where we go sideways a little bit, maybe we peak down and then we start to go. Because the overall trend remains intact, price is now above the 55 level, which is a major LVN. And again, that's a level that if price is seeing a transitional phase back above it, then any rejection here now leads to another round of strength. So we'll keep an eye on crude oil throughout the week. Also looking at gold futures lastly, this one down here pretty significantly, down 1% here today already in the pre-market. One thing you'll notice is that before when we had this pretty significant high, and we mentioned there could be a quick snapback. But for the most part, once price broke down on this day, and the next morning we mentioned that again prices are having trouble holding above the previous month's close, and that could lead to quite a bit of selling pressure, and it did. And we were looking for a retest at 1300, and I mentioned watch 1300 for signs of buying pressure, and it never came. Instead, price sliced right through it, and then today you can see right here the pullback toward 1300 being offered in overnight trading. That led to some selling pressure here. So after breaking below 1300, the idea is we're likely headed to 1275 in these recent lows here, and that's going to be a zone to watch again for signs that perhaps we could see a low at some point. This is a strong high. At some point we're going to sell off until we find a strong low. Once we find that strong low, there's going to be a high probability bounce back to the midpoint of that range. It's probably going to be the previous close, so we can probably measure out where that might be. But for the most part, you know, any oversold type of condition could lead to a great return and rally. If it leaves off a rejection tail, we'll be looking for a swift high probability bounce back toward the close. For right now, this thing is still hunting lower toward 1275 until proven otherwise. Alright, that is it for now. We'll see how these markets play out the rest of the session. Please join me this afternoon at 3:30 p.m. Central. That's using the Join Me link, the PivotBoss code. So I will put that out on Twitter as well. Everyone have a fantastic rest of your day, and I'll see you in the trading room. Take care.